Welcome back, and let's continue with our focus on our top story, where Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro has arrived in New York to face a litany of criminal charges, including narco-terrorism conspiracy and cocaine importation conspiracy. I'm joined now by University of Pretoria Africa Center for the Study of the United States Director, Professor Christopher Isike. Professor, thank you so much for your time tonight. Just help me understand. I was talking to someone tonight, earlier in the day, who actually described what we saw yesterday as, quote, America colonizing Venezuela. Is that a fair assessment?
Good evening, and thank you for having me. Well, there is a sense in which one can say that that is the case, because we are seeing U.S. Imperial wings and fangs bearing itself again. And so, normatively speaking, this particular military action, like the one that they did 30 years ago against Manuel Noriega of Panama, challenges established post-1945 restraints on unilateral military coercion, and poses implications for future interstate relations and conflict resolution globally, and as well as security, especially when you hear talks about the President Trump saying that America is going to be running Venezuela for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
It's not clarified what that means, whether it's just the oil infrastructure they will take over and run with American oil companies, or whether they are going to actively run the government of Venezuela.
South Africa, Prof, is one of several countries that has condemned this attack, calling for the UN to intervene. What is it that the UN can do here? We know how President Trump feels about this global body.
Well, again, even from his first term, he has been signaling his contempt for multilateralism and against the UN particularly. I think that the best way to answer this question is the fact that the United States is the United Nations, and the United Nations is the United States. Because without the money of the United States, the UN is a sitting lame duck. And then, of course, you also have the conundrum of the UN Security Council and its veto powers, the veto powers of the members, which can make them override multilateral decisions. This particular action was supposed to have been, approved by the UN Security Council before it should take place, and not doing that, apart from violating other laws, it just speaks to the weakness of the United Nations, secure as a body, basically.
President Trump said yesterday the U.S. action was to free Venezuela and, quote, make it great again. Is this about the interest of Venezuelans, or is this about America, really?
Well, you will ask, what is America, really? Right now, America is Trump, and Trump is America. There are those who argue that there are other geopolitical and geostrategic factors at play. Of course, China is one of those. Russia is there as well. But you also want to look at the oil factor as well. Many have argued that, there is not much oil that is being produced by Venezuela right now, even though they hold the highest amount of crude oil deposits globally, even more than the US.
Yeah.
But the production is quite low, and it's expensive to go in there to jack up that production to be meaningful to the US. But one of the things many people don't know about the oil is that the Venezuelan oil is exactly what the US needs right now in terms of the oil that it imports, the heavy crude, which most countries in the world do not have more than Venezuela. So that can also be another factor if you look at what Trump is saying about Venezuelan oil.
He said there will be a proper transition in Venezuela, right? What will that look like? What will it entail?
It's difficult to say because there are a lot of political groups in Venezuela. The most powerful of them, which happen to be in the minority, but they are most powerful in terms of the access to power and the Maduro Chavez regime, is the collectivos of Chavism, right? These people they have street enforcers who have largely prevented the ordinary people of Venezuela from coming out to actually express themselves over this particular incident. So there is that group that is in power. And that's the reason why Trump is saying that they are not. There may be a second wave of attack because they are not going to simply leave, the old regime to carry on doing what they've been doing and make the same mistakes that America made in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and the likes, right?
Yeah.
But there's also the ordinary people who feel that the last election in 2024 was stolen by Maduro and his goons, and they have the opposition. They want to support the opposition. The lady who won the Nobel Peace Prize, who leads the opposition. There's also Guaido, who's a opposition leader. All of them are in exile. But if the transition is done properly, there could be ways for all political interests to compete freely. And if it's managed properly, it can produce a new form of democracy. But it has to be directed. And the question is by who?
Yeah, we have seen America carrying out attacks in Nigeria and now Venezuela in a space of about, 2 weeks? Who's next?
Yeah, it could be anybody. And you heard Marco Rubio signal that warning yesterday at the press conference they just had. He said that the entire world should watch. So everyone should be worried. It's not just Venezuela, it's not just Nigeria, it's not just even South Africa. But to answer your question in terms of Africa, we need to, these things should tell us, give us more reason, to actually begin to ask ourselves what we should be doing at home and how we can form a group and negotiate as a group and deal with, these powers, because all of them are in for their own interests and nothing more. Right now, it's about power, real power.
All right, so thank you so much for your time tonight. University of Pretoria, Africa Center for the Study of United States Director, Professor Christopher Isike.